All right, we're going to try to do another one of these little campus tours, looking at some of the various turfgrass situations that we can find here on campus. I'm Jason Cruz, faculty member in the Environmental Horticulture Department here at the University of Florida. And first place I'm stopping here is right outside of Fifield Hall. And I just want to kind of highlight the impact that shade has on turf. And when we talk about shade, really we're talking about a reduction in light quantity, but also a corresponding reduction in light quality in some cases. And the type of shade that you're dealing with can really have an influence on whether that reduction in light quantity and quality has a significant impact on the plants. So if I turn this camera around here and we look over under these pine trees, you can see that there's some shade there, but it's fairly filtered and the grass is still receiving a decent amount of light. And looking at the turfgrass canopy itself, I think you can see that it's still reasonably thick and that there's a lot of grass there. But when we turn around back behind me where I was just standing and we look at the shade that's cast by the building right here, this is a north wall on a northeast corner of the building. And of course this gets a little bit of morning sun, but from about 11 o'clock or noon through the rest of the day, between that west face or east facing wall, which blocks all the afternoon and evening sun, and this north facing wall, which blocks all of the afternoon and late afternoon sun, we have very little sunlight that reaches this area. And you can see that this canopy is fairly thin. In these areas where the grass is thin, we obviously will see more weed pressure, and you can see that there. But there's more weeds in that grass than there is over here where we have full sun. And that is a fairly typical response. So we'll leave that there for this first stop and go from here to find our next one. All right, I got to make a quick stop here and just share one of my favorite plants with you. I walk past this every day on my way into my office. I'll flip the camera around here and show you what it is. It is a hibiscus, and you can see hopefully from the flowers there that this thing gives color. It's one of my favorite plants. It's given color year-round basically, and is pretty fascinating plant to have in landscape. I'm hoping maybe I can get one in my own landscape here before long. Anyway, I just thought I had to share that with you. All right, someplace different on campus. I'm actually down at Pony Field, or what used to be called Pony Field if you've been around campus for a while. I actually don't know what they decided to name this field right offhand yet. But this is where the UF marching band practices. Those of you that haven't been on campus maybe for the last year or so will be surprised maybe to know that they've actually put in an artificial turf field here. I'll flip the camera around here so that you can see it. It's a field turf field in terms of the brand. It's an artificial field built basically to the same standards that an athletic field would be built to, which is, I think, something that makes a lot of sense. The field itself, the reason for it that they decided to do that, this location sits pretty low, fairly close to Lake Alice. And as a result of that, the water table was pretty shallow. And in the fall, when they would be out here doing their marching band practice, it ultimately would end up being saturated, particularly towards the north end of the field, and the band members were marching in water for a big portion of the time. So they came in, we tried to do some work to fix the situation that was existing with the old natural field. But when you take into consideration the amount of wear that a marching band puts on a surface the best option was to put in a synthetic field like this. One of the things that I feel strongly about is, synthetic does have a place, or artificial fields have a place, where the amount of wear and damage that is created through the regular use is so much that it surpasses what you can maintain a safe natural surface with. So it makes sense to put this in here. I know that the marching band and the band directors have been really happy about having it. One of the things that I do want to share with you that I do kind of have a little bit of an issue with, and this is both at the beginning of an installation, I guess, and then long term when the field wears out, is the leftover. Right over here, there is this big pile of leftover carpet from the install. You can see it's all just piled up right here. And then in that bag is extra crumb rubber. So the profile for a synthetic field like this is a combination of sand and crumb rubber that's used to fill the fibers. That is an extra bag of crumb rubber that they can add to the field as it wears and settles, and ultimately some of it is carried off in the band player's shoes. So that's my summary here. I'll wander around a little bit more and see if I can find some other things to look at. All right, our next stop is just right outside of the Rights Union here at the middle of the University of Florida campus. We've got this sort of little amphitheater place here. This was all renovated in a few years back when they did all the remodeling to the Rights Union. Added all this stuff up here, which you can see. Closed in all this central part. And they planted grass in here in the seating areas. And if I were to guess, there's been people either dumping their drinks or something that's causing all these dead spots in the grass. The question is that I have for you is, which grass is it? And so when we look at areas like this and the types of grass that would be suitable for it, we would want something that's fairly wear tolerant, that grows relatively slow and provides a dense canopy, and and that it'd be comfortable to sit on, right? Because as you see, we've got people out here that are doing just that. They're sitting out here enjoying the sun and relaxing. So to do that, we've got a couple grasses that might make sense. Bahia grass is kind of out of the list because it's a little too coarse textured and it grows too fast. St. Augustine grass, again, kind of coarse textured, not real comfortable to sit on probably. But Bermuda grass and zoysia grass would be a couple options we could consider. Seashore paspalum would be another one. But it'll take a look here and see which one it is that we're looking at. So when we get down and take a closer look at what it is that we're managing, we can see these grass leaves. I'm going to try to find a newly emerging leaf here because I can see that they have pointed leaf tips, which you can kind of tell right there. They have pointed leaf tips. What I'm interested in is growth habit and vernation. And so I'm going to look for some idea of what kind of growth habit it is. And right here, I just pulled up a rhizome. You can tell it's a rhizome because it's lateral growth structure. There's no chlorophyll in it, and it has nodes along the length of it. So Bermuda grass and zoysia grass both would have rhizomes. They would also both have stolons. Let me see if I can find a stolon in here somewhere. Stolons are going to be right at the surface of the soil, right? Surely there's a stolon in here somewhere. Although we are kind of in the off season for growth. There we go. I see one. A little bit of one. is proving a little more difficult than I expected it to be. Let's see. The difference between a rhizome and stolon is both where they're located, with rhizomes being below ground, stolons being above ground. And then the stolons, which you can see a little bit in this, I hope, in the color, but that's got some green chlorophyll in it. The stolons are above ground and do have some chlorophyll, so they'll be green rather than creamy white. The vernation of this plant, if it's Bermuda grass, we'd be looking for a folded vernation. And if it's zoysia grass, we would be looking for a rolled vernation. And remember, vernation is how the newly emerging leaves come out from the plant. And if you look down on this right here, down on the top of this leaf that's coming right out towards the camera, you should be able to see that that is a rolled vernation. You can see it's kind of cupped on itself right there. And it is a rolled vernation. So with that, we can also take a look at the ligule here. If we pull back the leaf blade and look at the ligule, we can see there's a few hairs there, which is what we would expect. But pointed leaf tip, rolled vernation, rhizomes and stolons. This is zoysia grass that they've got planted here as a base. I'm going to wander around a little bit more and see what else we can find and get back with you. All right, my last stop today, decided to make here in the greenhouse. I wanted to show you a couple of the cool season grasses and talk about a couple ways that you can differentiate them. They're two grasses that look very similar to each other. They're planted together in a lot of landscapes. And flip the camera around here and just show you what we're talking about. So what we've got here are two grasses I wanted to have you guys look at. And just from a distance and looking at these, they look very similar to each other. And that's on purpose in a lot of cases. The turfgrass breeders are trying to breed these, one in particular, to blend in very well with the other. Without looking at them very closely, though, you will have a very difficult time telling which one is which is why I stress the identification piece of the class so heavily. So if we get in these and look at these a little bit closer, one of the first things that I like to do is look at the leaf tip. And with the grass on the right, when I look at that leaf tip, it's a pointed leaf tip. It's flat. There's not a whole lot going to it. It comes to a really nice subtle point. And if I grab one of the leaf tips off of the grass on the left, looking at it straight on, it looks a little bit more blunt, which you can kind of begin to see right here. And if we look at it in profile, what we'll start to hopefully be able to see is that it is boat-shaped, which means it is like the keel of a boat or the front of a boat, and it's cupped. So the POA species, Poa pratensis, Poa trivialis, Poa annua, have a boat-shaped leaf tip. What we have here in these two grasses, the one on the right is perennial ryegrass, one on the left is Kentucky bluegrass. Now we hopefully remember that perennial ryegrass, the one on the right, has a bunch type growth habit. It's going to have a fibrous root system and really no lateral growth structures. It will tiller and get into bigger bunches, but there's no lateral growth structures, no rhizomes or stolons on perennial ryegrass. However, when we look at Kentucky bluegrass has rhizomes. And you can actually see one that I've separated out here off to the side of the pot. The rhizomes are below ground, of course, and they have nodes along the length of them where you can see that there have been roots growing from those nodes right there, right there. They are finer in texture and diameter than what we see in our warm season grasses typically. The warm season Bermudas and zoysias often have much coarser textured rhizomes. But this lateral growth structure of a rhizome underground is one of the primary reasons that Kentucky bluegrass is preferred for athletic fields
in high traffic areas because it has that lateral growth structure underneath the ground that it can grow back new stolons or new shoots and roots from. Perennial ryegrass blends very well with Kentucky bluegrass. You can see that. You might ask why we would ever plant perennial ryegrass in with Kentucky bluegrass. And what you'll probably remember, and I'll reiterate here, is that the time to germination for Kentucky bluegrass can be anywhere from 14 to 21 days. And the time to germination on perennial ryegrass is anywhere from 8 to 10 days. So if we're trying to get a site established, get some soil stabilization going, maybe make a customer happy, we'll put in a little bit of perennial ryegrass to get some really quick green to pop up. And then the ideal blend would be really no more than about 10 or 15% perennial ryegrass seed, the balance of it being cultivars of Kentucky bluegrass. Anyway, I hope that was interesting and maybe a little bit informative to you. I look forward to sharing more with you in the future. Go Gators.